Good day, my name is Mary Fisher, and this is my Product of Learning presentation for Student Teaching Spring 2017. I will begin with my class information. I was placed at East Rowan High School for my student teaching semester. Here I received 3 Civics and Economics courses, including first block Honors Civics and Economics, second block General Civics and Economics, and third block General Civics and Economics. While I did perform my study in all 3 courses, I chose to focus in on third block General Civics and Economics for my Product of Learning. Within this third block class, I have approximately 23 students, 21 of which are Caucasian, 2 of which are African American. There are 2 students in this third block class with identified exceptionalities. The modifications for student 1 are modified assignments as needed, read aloud instructions, and separate room testing. The modifications for student 2 are alternative teaching strategies, scheduled extended time for exams and tests, and separate room testing. There are 17 males and 6 females in this third block class. My content area for my Product of Learning is the Branches of Government unit. I chose to separate this unit into 3 subcategories, including Article 1 of the Constitution, Legislative Branch, Article 2 of the Constitution, Executive Branch, and Article 3 of the Constitution, Judicial Branch. My standards for the unit are listed here. While most standards are separated based on subcategories, there are 3 of the standards listed that fall within all 3 subcategories, therefore within the entire unit. These standards are Standard F.C&G 2.1, analyze the structures of national, state, and local governments in terms of ways they are organized to maintain order, security, welfare of the public, and protection of the citizens. Standard F.C&G 2.4, compare the constitutions and the structures of the United States and North Carolina governments. And Standard F.C&G 2.6, evaluate the authority federal, state, and local governments have over individual rights and privileges. I separated my objectives based on objectives that fall within the entire unit, and then objectives that fall within each subcategory. My content objective for the entire unit was that students would be able to understand the 7 articles of the Constitution and what each individual article set up. My skill objectives for the unit were that students would be able to describe the 7 articles of the United States Constitution, and students would be able to demonstrate the higher level of understanding of the 3 branches of government and how they relate. The first subcategory was Article 1, the Legislative Branch. The content objectives for this subcategory are that students will be able to understand the powers and benefits of being in Congress, and students will be able to gain a deeper understanding of the legislative branch of government. The skill objectives for this subcategory are that students will be able to describe the structure and organization of the United States Congress, and that students will be able to discuss the powers and benefits of being in Congress. The second subcategory was Article 2, the Executive Branch. The content objectives for this subcategory are that students will be able to gain a deeper understanding of the executive branch of government, and that students will be able to identify the roles of the president. The skill objectives for the second subcategory are that students will be able to describe the structure and organization of the executive branch, and that students will be able to discuss the qualifications and terms to become the President of the United States. The third subcategory of this unit was Article 3, the Judicial Branch. The content objectives for this subcategory are that students will be able to understand the third article of the Constitution, including the structure and organization of the judicial branch. And the skill objectives for this subcategory include that students will be able to identify and describe the 8 types of cases that the federal court system has exclusive jurisdiction over, and that students will be able to identify and distinguish the separate court systems. Within assessment strategies, I utilized both formative assessment and summative assessment. My formative assessment strategies included entrance tickets, exit tickets, stations, achieve 3,000 literacy articles, verbal questioning, my pre-assessment, my mid-assessment, as well as group presentations. My summative assessment strategies included the unit project, a mid-unit quiz, and a post-assessment which stood in place of the Unit 4 test. Here you can see the pre-assessment graph. The highest grade in the pre-assessment was a 93.33%, while the lowest grade in the pre-assessment was a 14.67%. The average for the pre-assessment was approximately 43.24%, being lower than passing. In reviewing the data from the pre-assessment, I was able to slow my instruction and focus on repetition through alternative methods of delivering and reinforcing the knowledge. I was able to include more review-based learning opportunities as well as implement project-based learning. The picture on the right-hand side is our unit project, which focused in on the second subcategory, being the executive branch, where the students were expected to create a hat for every role of the president. This was another method of delivering and reinforcing that knowledge to ensure that the students fully understood that portion of the unit. In our mid-assessment graph, the highest grade was an 89%, the lowest grade was a 12%, and the average was approximately 52.92%. While the highest grade and the lowest grade did decrease, the average increased, so we were able to see some growth between the pre-assessment and the mid-assessment. In reviewing the data from the mid-assessment, I was able to vary my review methods, including using software such as the Kahoot and Quiz. These are 2 game-based, competition-based review methods. I was also able to utilize more activity and group engagement through peer teaching opportunities. This was seen in the oral presentations as well as in group collaboration. I was also able to introduce more real-life and current examples into the instruction. This was done by encouraging the students to bring forth their own examples as well as utilizing articles focusing in on real-life court cases. In the post-assessment graph, we were able to see the highest grade go up to a 107%. This was including an extra credit opportunity that the students received. However, without the extra credit, the highest grade was a 100%. The lowest grade in the post-assessment was a 23%, and the average was approximately 67.33%. Here we are able to see a far higher amount of students reaching above the passing grade of 60%. In comparing the pre-assessment graph and the post-assessment graph, I was able to note that the average score increased by approximately 24.09%. The pre-assessment passing rate was approximately 18.18%, meaning that 18.18% of the students received above a 60%, while the post-assessment passing rate was approximately 71.43%, meaning that approximately 71.43% of the students received above a 60% on their test. Here you are given a visual data comparison of the pre-assessment and post-assessment graphs. We are able to note the incredible difference in passing scores being above that 60% and the shift from below passing to passing in the pre-assessment to post-assessment graphs. Throughout the semester and throughout my POL, I was observed by John McNeil, my cooperating teacher, Julia Erdy, the East Rowan principal, Melissa Udy, my supervisor, as well as Deanna Hurley-Chamberlain, my student teaching professor. With these observations, I received feedback as well as adjustment techniques to utilize going forward in my product of learning as well as in my teaching in general. I also collaborated with Chad Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell is another social studies teacher at East Rowan High School who also teaches civics and economics, so I collaborated with him to align our content and make sure that we were both staying on pace. I also worked with East Rowan's social studies department as a whole in gaining perspective as well as more adjustments on my lessons and on my teaching strategy going forward. And looking at the impact on learning from the student perspective, I was able to see increased expectations. By this I mean by the time we reached our post-assessment, I saw many more students encouraging each other and themselves to study harder because they wanted to see that better grade. They expected to see a better grade, and many of them did. I also was able to observe a greater understanding of the content knowledge in the students' interaction with each other and their explanations and their oral presentations, as well as reflecting in their projects and formative assessment. I was also able to notice higher retention rates within my formative questioning at the end of classes as well as in our post-assessment. Finally, I was able to see increased drive. I saw a much higher percentage of students trying even harder on their review, trying even harder in their classwork and in their projects as well as on their test, taking the extra time to study outside of class and in our individual learning time or ILT throughout the days. And focusing on the impact of teaching, I was able to reflect on how this process has changed my perspective on teaching and changed my teaching style. Perception of confidence is a very key idea in the classroom. It's important for the students to see that I'm confident in what I know and that I'm confident in my ability to teach them and expand their knowledge. In addition to that, I also look at understanding limitations. When I say this, I mean understanding where my gaps in knowledge may be so that I may fill those, understanding what questions the students may have, understanding where they may lack and where I may lack in order to fill in those holes prior to instruction. I'm also looking into the importance of preparation. By that I mean being prepared to teach not only in the classroom, not only that day, but also in the weeks ahead. And finally, looking into adaptability and flexibility, because at the end of the day, anything can happen within the classroom, so it's important to be able to adapt and change based off the class environment. Thank you very much.